The night my straight best friend got dumped, he showed up at my door with a trash bag full of clothes and bloodshot eyes, and I realized, way too late, that letting him stay with me was going to ruin everything. It was just after midnight when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. I was half asleep, sprawled on my couch, Netflix still glowing in the background, some true crime doc murmuring to itself. But when I saw Evan's name on the screen, my stomach tightened. Evan never called that late. He barely called at all. "Hey," I said, my voice rough. "You okay?" There was a pause. Too long. "I'm outside," he said quietly. "Can I come up?" I didn't ask questions. I just grabbed my keys and went downstairs. He was standing by the curb under the flickering streetlight, shoulders slumped, hoodie wrinkled, hair a mess like he'd been running his hands through it all night. There was a black trash bag at his feet, stuffed and sagging, like he'd scooped his life into it without sorting first. "Jesus," I said. "What happened?" He let out a humorless laugh. "She kicked me out." That was all he said. But the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes stayed glued to the pavement, I knew it wasn't just a fight. This was the end. We'd been best friends since college. 4 years of late-night drives, dumb inside jokes, helping each other move apartments, showing up when things fell apart. I'd seen him go through breakups before, but this was different. He looked hollow, like something had been pulled out of him and not replaced. "Come on," I said, grabbing the trash bag. "You're staying with me." He looked up then, surprised. "Are you sure?" I didn't hesitate. That was my first mistake. Of course. The elevator ride up was quiet, not awkward, just heavy. I could feel his presence beside me, the familiar weight of him, the comfort I'd always pretended was just friendship. He smelled like cold air and something sharp, maybe the soap she used, the one he'd adopted without realizing it. When we got inside my apartment, he stood there like he didn't know where to put himself. "You can take the bed," I said automatically. "I'll crash on the couch." He shook his head. "No, I don't want to kick you out of your own bed." "You're not." Another pause. His eyes finally met mine. They were red, glossy, wrecked. "I don't want to be alone tonight," he said. That sentence landed somewhere deep in my chest. So I nodded. "Okay. We'll figure it out." That night, we lay on opposite sides of my bed, a careful distance between us, like the space itself mattered. The room was dark except for the streetlight leaking through the blinds. I could hear him breathing, uneven, controlled, like he was holding something back. "She said I don't really know who I am," he said suddenly. "That I hide behind everything." I stared at the ceiling. "That's bullshit." "Maybe," he said, "but she said it like she meant it." I wanted to reach over, to put a hand on his arm, to do what best friends do, but my body froze, caught between instinct and a truth I'd buried for years. Because the thing was, I'd known exactly who he was to me for a long time, and lying there in the dark, listening to my straight best friend fall apart beside me, I had a sinking feeling that his grief was about to pull us somewhere neither of us was ready to go. And once we crossed that line, there would be no going back. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I started to drift off, I'd hear Evan shift beside me. A quiet sigh, the mattress dipping slightly as he rolled onto his back, then onto his side again, like he was trying to find a position where his thoughts couldn't catch up with him. At some point, I felt him turn toward me. "Hey," he whispered. "Yeah? You awake?" "Yeah." Another pause. Then, softer, "Thanks for letting me stay." I swallowed. "You don't have to thank me." "I do," he said. "You didn't even ask questions." I almost laughed. "Almost. You'll tell me when you're ready." He went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Less heavy. More exposed. "I thought I was doing everything right," he said finally. "You know, job, relationship, plans. I thought that was enough." "It is enough," I said, "just maybe not for her." "That's the thing," he muttered. She said it felt like I was always holding something back, like I was only halfway there. My chest tightened. Were you? He didn't answer right away. I don't know, he said. Maybe. I wanted to tell him I'd known him long enough to see the cracks he pretended weren't there, the way he avoided certain conversations, the way he deflected with jokes when things got too real, the way he sometimes looked at me like he wanted to say something and then didn't. Instead, I said, "You're allowed to not have everything figured out." He let out a breath that sounded like relief. Somewhere between that and morning, exhaustion finally won. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was warmth. Solid, familiar warmth pressed against my back. Evan was spooning me. Not aggressively, not intentionally, I told myself. His arm was draped over my waist, his forehead resting between my shoulder blades, his breath slow and even against my neck. He was dead asleep. I didn't move. I should have. Any normal person would have shifted, gently untangled themselves, pretended it never happened. But my body refused. Every nerve ending felt lit up, like it had been waiting for this exact moment without my permission. I lay there, staring at the wall, heart pounding. This was Evan, my best friend, straight, heartbroken, vulnerable, and his hand twitched slightly against my stomach, like even in sleep he was holding on. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to get up, to put space between us, to protect both of us. Instead, I stayed. Eventually, he stirred. I felt it the second he realized where he was. His arm tightened, then froze. His breathing changed. "Oh, shit," he murmured, pulling his arm back like he'd touched something hot. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," I said quickly, rolling over to face him before he could spiral. "You were asleep." He sat up, rubbing his face. His hair was sticking up, his eyes still hazy. Vulnerable in a way I wasn't used to seeing. "I don't usually do that," he said. "I mean, move around like that." "It's really fine," I repeated. Too quickly. He nodded but didn't look convinced. "I guess I just haven't slept alone in a while." That landed harder than I expected. I sat up too, putting some space between us, the bed suddenly feeling too small. "You want coffee?" "Yeah," he said. "That'd be good." In the kitchen, we moved around each other carefully, like last night had shifted something we both sensed but didn't know how to name. He leaned against the counter while I poured coffee, watching me in a way that made my skin prickle. "What?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Nothing," he said. Then, quieter, "I forget how easy it is with you." My hand tightened around the mug. "Easy how?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I don't feel like I have to perform or explain myself." I met his eyes, held them. "That's because you don't." Something passed between us then. Not physical, not yet, just raw, intimate, dangerous in a different way. That day turned into a routine. Evan stayed. Not officially, just for a few days that quickly stopped having a number attached to them. He took the bed, I took the couch. We cooked together, watched dumb shows, talked late into the night. And slowly, without either of us saying it out loud, the walls he'd always kept up started to come down. He talked about the breakup more, about how trapped he'd felt, about the pressure to be a certain kind of guy, a certain kind of future. And sometimes, he'd look at me like he was seeing me for the first time. That look scared the hell out of me, because I knew exactly where it could lead. And I wasn't sure either of us would survive it unchanged. By the fourth night, the couch started to feel like a lie. Not because it was uncomfortable, though it was, but because every night, after hours of talking, after the TV had gone quiet and the apartment settled into that late humming stillness, Evan would linger in my doorway like he didn't quite know where he belonged anymore. "You good?" I'd ask. "Yeah," he'd say, then hesitate. "You sure you don't want the bed tonight? We played that game twice before I finally caved." "I'll take it tomorrow," I said one night. "Just scoot over." He smiled at that, Not a big one. Something small and grateful. Something that made my chest ache. So we shared the bed again. This time, it wasn't grief that kept us awake. It was awareness. We talked in low voices, inches apart, about nothing important. Music we'd been into lately, a road trip we never took, people we used to be. Our legs brushed once. Then again, neither of us moved away. You ever feel like your life doesn't match who you are? He asked suddenly. I stared at the ceiling. All the time. He turned toward me. I could feel it without looking. What do you do with that feeling? I exhaled slowly. Usually, I bury it, pretend it'll go away on its own. He laughed quietly. Yeah, that sounds about right. I finally looked at him then. Really looked. His face was softer than usual in the dim light, edges blurred by exhaustion and honesty. This wasn't the confident guy everyone else saw. This was Evan stripped down to something real. Do you think, he said carefully, that hiding parts of yourself can actually break a relationship? My pulse jumped. Depends what parts, he swallowed. What if you don't even know what you're hiding? The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I think, I said slowly, that people can feel when you're not fully there, even if they don't know why. He nodded. That's what she said. Silence settled between us, thick and loaded. His knees shifted, pressing into mine. This time, neither of us pretended it was accidental. Hey, he said quietly. Yeah? Can I ask you something, and you promise not to make it weird? I almost laughed at the irony. I promise. He hesitated. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Have you ever? He began, then stopped. Cleared his throat. Have you ever felt like you knew someone better than anyone else, and that scared you? My heart hammered. Yes. Like, he continued, voice barely above a whisper. They see you in ways you don't let other people see you? Yes, I said again. My voice was steady, but my hands weren't. He searched my face like he was looking for permission, or a mirror. And that maybe, he added, you leaned on them a little too hard without realizing it? The honesty in his eyes almost broke me. Evan, I said softly. Just answer honestly, he said. Please. I took a breath. I think when someone feels safe, they stop guarding themselves. And that can feel confusing, especially if you're not used to it. He nodded slowly. Yeah. Then, almost to himself, I feel different with you. There it was, the sentence I had both feared and waited for. How different? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out, hesitant, unsure, and rested his fingers against my wrist. Light, questioning, like he'd pull away the second I told him to. My whole body went still. I don't know what it means, he said. I just know I don't want to lose it. My throat tightened. I turned my hand over, palm up, not grabbing him, just there. You won't, I said. Our fingers curled together naturally, like they'd done this before, like they remembered something we hadn't let ourselves name. We lay there, holding hands in the dark, saying nothing. It wasn't physical, not yet, but it was intimate in a way that felt far more dangerous. Because somewhere between heartbreak and honesty, my straight best friend had crossed into a place neither of us had rules for, and I wasn't sure either of us knew how to get back. The next morning felt fragile, not awkward exactly, just careful. Like we were both walking around something invisible in the middle of the apartment, afraid to bump into it too hard and shatter it. Evan woke up before me. I knew because I felt the bed shift, the warmth beside me disappear, and a weird pang followed it, sharp and unexpected. When I opened my eyes, I could hear him in the kitchen, cabinets opening softly, the coffee grinder humming. Normal sounds, normal morning. Except nothing felt normal anymore. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the night before. The questions. The honesty, his fingers laced with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't crossed any obvious line. But something had changed anyway. When I finally got up, he was standing by the counter in one of my t-shirts, holding 2 mugs. He looked up when he heard me. "Morning," he said. "Morning." We held eye contact a beat too long. He said, gesturing with the mug. "Hope you don't mind. I grabbed one of your shirts. Mine smelled like her." Something about the way he said it, casual but honest, made my chest tighten. "Yeah," I said. "That's fine." He handed me a mug. Our fingers brushed. Again, neither of us pulled away immediately. We sat at the small kitchen table, knees almost touching. He drank his coffee like he always did, one hand wrapped around the mug, the other tapping lightly against the ceramic. Nervous habit. I'd seen it 100 times before. "So," he said finally, "about last night." Here it was. I forced myself to meet his eyes. "Yeah, I didn't mean to dump all that on you," he said. It all came out." "I know," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. "I don't want to make things weird between us." A bitter little smile tugged at my mouth. "We passed, weird, a while ago." He laughed softly at that, then sobered. "You know what I mean. You're my best friend. I don't want to screw that up." I should have said something safe, something responsible. Instead, I said, "I don't think honesty screws things up. I think pretending nothing's happening does." He studied me, really studied me, like he was seeing if I meant it. "You've always been like this," he said. "Calling things out when everyone else avoids them. Someone has to." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Last night scared me a little." "Why?" "Because it felt real," he said. "And I don't know what to do with that." I nodded. "You don't have to do anything, not yet." That seemed to relax him, just a fraction. "You're good at this, giving people space." I almost laughed. If only he knew how much restraint that took. The day passed quietly. He went out to grab more clothes from his ex's place while she was at work. I stayed behind, trying not to imagine him back in that apartment, surrounded by the life they'd built together. Trying not to feel relieved when he came back and dropped his bag by the door like it belonged there. That night, we didn't talk about it. We ordered takeout. Watched a stupid comedy. Laughed. Real laughter this time. At some point, he leaned his head against my shoulder, just for a second, like it was instinctive. When he realized what he'd done, he froze. I didn't move. After a moment, he relaxed again, letting the weight stay there. "Sorry," he murmured. "Don't be." He shifted slightly, turning his face toward my neck. I could feel his breath there. Warm. Steady. "You ever feel like you're standing on the edge of something?" he asked quietly. "Like one step forward would change everything?" "Yes," I said. My voice was barely audible. "Does that ever stop being terrifying?" I thought about lying. I didn't. "No," I said, "but sometimes it's worth it." He didn't answer, but his hand slid slowly, deliberately, until it rested on my thigh. Not grabbing, not moving, just there. My entire body went still. "Tell me if this is too much," he said. It wasn't, and that scared me more than anything else, so I said nothing. And in that silence, my straight best friend leaned fully into me, his hand warm and heavy on my leg, his head tucked into the curve of my neck like he'd found somewhere safe. I knew then, we were past the point of pretending, and whatever came next was going to change us both. After that night, touch became normal. That was the dangerous part. Not rushed, not dramatic, just quietly woven into everything we did like it had always been there and we'd only just stopped pretending otherwise. Evan didn't pull his hand away right away. Not that night. Not even when the movie ended and the screen faded to black. We stayed there on the couch, his weight against me, his fingers still resting on my thigh like they belonged there. Eventually, he shifted. "Bed?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah," I said. We got up without looking at each other, brushing past in the narrow hallway. In the bedroom, we both paused, standing on opposite sides of the bed like the first night all over again. But this time, the tension wasn't grief. It was choice. He exhaled slowly. I just want to be clear about something. Okay. I don't know what this is, he said. I don't know what it means about me. But I do know I feel safe here. With you. My chest ached. You don't owe me labels. Or answers. His eyes searched mine. You're not hoping for something I can't give? The honesty in that question almost broke me. I thought carefully before answering. I'm hoping for honesty, whatever that looks like. He nodded. I can do that. So we got into bed. Not tangled. Not spooning. Just close enough that our shoulders touched. The warmth unmistakable. I could feel the tension humming between us. Like both of us were aware of every breath, every inch of space. You know, he said quietly, staring at the ceiling, I used to think intimacy was about physical closeness. I turned my head toward him. And now? And now? He said, I think it's about being seen when you're not trying to impress anyone. That was when I reached for him. Not his mouth, not his body, just his hand. He didn't hesitate this time. His fingers laced with mine instantly, grip firm, grounding. I felt him relax beside me, like his body finally got the message it had been waiting for. We stayed like that for a long time. At some point, he rolled onto his side to face me. Our faces were close, too close to ignore. You're looking at me like you're about to say something, he murmured. I am. What? If you want me to stop, I said, I will. At any point. No questions. His eyes softened. I don't want you to stop. That was all the permission I needed. Not to push forward, but to stay exactly where we were. My thumb brushed slowly over his knuckles. Just once. He inhaled sharply, like that small touch hit harder than anything else could have. Is this okay? I asked. Yes, he said immediately. Then quieter, more than okay. He leaned in first, not a kiss, his forehead resting against mine, breath mingling with mine, noses brushing. We hovered there, suspended, both of us waiting to see if the other would pull back. Neither of us did. When our lips finally met, it was soft, almost hesitant. A question more than a statement. He froze for half a second, then kissed me back. Slow, careful, like he was memorizing the feeling. I could feel his hand tighten around mine, his body inching closer without thinking. No rush, no hunger, just connection. When we pulled apart, his eyes were wide. Oh, he breathed. Yeah, I said softly. He let out a shaky laugh. That's not what I expected. Good or bad? He shook his head. Just different, in a good way. We didn't go further. We didn't need to. We fell asleep like that. Hands tangled, bodies close, his forehead pressed against my temple. For the first time since he showed up at my door, he slept deeply, peacefully. And I lay awake for a long time, staring into the dark, heart pounding. Because my straight best friend had just kissed me, and neither of us wanted to pretend it didn't mean something. The kiss didn't turn things explosive. It made them quiet. That was what surprised me most. The next morning, Evan didn't bolt. He didn't panic. He didn't pretend it hadn't happened. Instead, he woke up slowly, still close, still touching me like it made sense. When he realized where he was, who he was with, he didn't pull away. He just stared at me for a long second, searching my face. Hey, he said. Hey! A small smile tugged at his mouth. So that happened. Yeah. You okay? I nodded. Are you? He thought about it, really thought about it. Then, I think so. I feel calm, which is new. That word stuck with me all day. Calm. We didn't talk about labels, didn't dissect the kiss. We just existed together, made breakfast, sat too close at the table, let our knees touch without flinching. Every now and then, I'd catch him looking at me like he was recalibrating, like his brain was quietly rearranging something it had assumed was fixed. Later that afternoon, he finally said it. "I've never felt like this before. I didn't pretend not to understand." "Like what?" "Like I don't have to be anything," he said. "Not the boyfriend, not the guy who's got it together. Just me." I leaned against the counter. "You've always been you with me." He met my eyes. "I know. I just didn't realize how rare that was." That night, the distance between us disappeared completely. Not in a rush, not in a blur, just naturally. He reached for me when we sat down. I reached back. When we went to bed, we didn't negotiate sides. He curled into me without asking. And this time, I held him. His head fit perfectly against my chest, like he'd been trying that shape on for years without knowing it. I could feel his heartbeat, fast at first, then steady. "This is okay, right?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. "It's okay." He was silent for a moment then. "I'm scared." "I know." "Not of you," he added quickly. "Of what this means." I brushed my thumb slowly over his arm. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he exhaled, tension easing out of him. "Thank you." We lay there in the dark, bodies close, breath sinking. I could feel how much he was holding back. Not desire, but emotion. Like if he let go too fast, he might lose control of something fragile. At one point, he shifted, lifting his head to look at me. "Can I kiss you again?" he asked. The question did something to me. Not the kiss itself, the care. "Yes," I said. This one was different. Still gentle, but more certain. Less wondering, more choosing. He lingered, like he was learning the shape of my mouth, like he wanted to remember it. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "I don't feel broken," he said softly. "For the first time in a while." My chest tightened. "You never were." He smiled at that. A real one, the kind that reached his eyes. But even as he relaxed against me again, I knew the hard part was coming. Because comfort was one thing. Facing the truth of what this meant, of who he might be, of what we were becoming, that was another. And the world outside my apartment wasn't nearly as gentle as this room. It was his sister who cracked the bubble. Evan's phone buzzed while we were eating dinner. Something simple, pasta out of a box, wine we both pretended wasn't too strong. He glanced at the screen, relaxed at first, then stilled. "You don't have to answer," I said automatically. He shook his head. "It's Claire. If I don't, she'll assume I'm dead." He stepped onto the balcony, sliding the door shut behind him. I watched through the glass as his posture changed. Shoulders back, voice dropping into that familiar, confident register. The version of Evan the world knew. I hated how quickly it happened. When he came back in, his expression was different. Not distant, just guarded. "She wanted to know if I found a place yet," he said. "Told her I'm still figuring things out." "And?" "And she asked if I was okay," he added. "Like, really okay?" I nodded slowly. "What did you say?" "That I'm fine." He huffed out a quiet laugh. "Which is a lie." "But not in the way she thinks." He sat down across from me, pushing his food around without eating. I could feel it. The shift, the reminder that whatever we were building lived in a world that would eventually ask questions. "I can stay here longer," he said suddenly. "If you want." My heart skipped, then steadied. "I want you to stay because you want to, not because you're hiding." He looked at me, surprised, then softer. "You're not making this easy." "I know," I said. "But I'm not going to be your secret escape hatch." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once across the room before stopping in front of me. "I don't want you to be." "Then what do you want?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. Finally, "I want time. To understand why being here feels more like home than anywhere else ever has." The honesty in that almost undid me. That night, we lay awake longer than usual. Not touching this time, just facing each other, talking in whispers like we were afraid the truth might overhear us. "I keep thinking this is just grief," he admitted. "Then I'm latching on because everything else fell apart." "And?" I asked. "And then I imagine leaving," he said. "Getting my own place, going back to normal." My chest tightened. "What does that feel like?" He swallowed. "Wrong." That word hung between us. "I don't know what that makes me," he said. "I've never questioned this part of myself, ever." "You don't have to redefine yourself overnight," I said. "Just don't lie to yourself." He nodded slowly. "I think that's what I've been doing for a long time." He reached out then, taking my hand, not tentative anymore, certain. "I'm not ready to tell the world," he said, "but I'm done pretending nothing's happening here." "That's enough," I said, and I meant it. He pulled me into him, forehead resting against mine, breath shaky but determined. Outside, the city went on like nothing had changed. Cars passed. People lived their lives. But in that room, something solid had formed. Not just attraction, not just comfort, a choice. And I knew the next step wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, Evan wasn't running from it. The morning Evan moved his last box into my apartment, it didn't feel dramatic. That's what surprised me most. No big speech. No, "what are we doing?" moment. Just him standing in the doorway with a beat-up cardboard box labeled Miss D, looking at me like he was asking a question without words. "You sure?" I asked. He smiled, nervous but real. "Yeah, I'm sure." And just like that, it stopped being temporary. The real test came a week later, when we ran into his ex at the grocery store. I felt him tense beside me the second he saw her. The old Evan would have pulled away instinctively, created distance, protected the version of himself everyone expected. I braced for it. Instead, he stayed right where he was. She looked at us, at the cart, at the way his hand rested casually at my lower back, and something in her expression shifted. Not anger, not jealousy, just understanding. "So this is what you meant," she said quietly. Evan nodded. "Yeah, I think it is." She studied him for a long moment, then gave a small, sad smile. "I'm glad you figured it out." When she walked away, Evan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. "I should feel guilty," he said. "You don't," I replied. He shook his head. "I feel free." That night, lying in bed together, he finally said the thing I'd never asked him to say. "I don't know what label fits me," he said. "And I don't care right now. I just know this." He pressed his forehead to mine, voice steady. "Isn't confusion. It's clarity." I kissed him then. Not careful anymore, not hesitant, just honest. Months passed. Slowly, quietly. We built something that didn't need an announcement to be real. Friends noticed. His sister noticed. The world adjusted. The way it always does. One night, much later, he laughed and said, "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I thought getting dumped ruined my life." He looked at me, eyes soft, certain. "But it brought me home." And standing there with my straight-turned, something else best friend, my partner, my choice, I realized grief hadn't broken us. It cracked him open. And love did the rest.